Welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palmer Show. And in this episode, I have with me a Stanford-educated and McKinsey-trained strategy consultant. His areas of expertise are business strategy, digital strategy, and organizational excellence. He aspires to be remembered as someone who always looked at how to make companies thrive and always brought out the best in everyone around him. John Nantz, welcome to the Dave Palmer Show.
Thank you, Dave.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show, John. I mean, you're a wonderful character for me to have on the show. Our political spectrums, well, you know, I've done a politics degree, I've done American politics, so I think I know a little bit about, you know, where you're coming from with your book. Which is what's it called again?
It's called Rediscovering Republicanism.
Yeah,
renewing America with our founding vision and values.
Right. Okay. Well, let's hope.
Might be a tough sell in your from your parts, Dave, in London, but maybe there's a few, you know,
in the UK it would, and I'm in a very red area, so it'll be more Democrat in my area.
Okay, got you. I'm looking for the blue. I'm looking for the blue areas, right? Is that
right? The Tories are in charge now. We're just waiting for a new leader. But
okay.
Rediscovering Republicanism must be a hot topic at the moment, just as it probably would be with the Conservatives in the UK. We won't get too deep in politics, as in scaring our listeners away, but. Sure. As I have got a politics degree, we can obviously touch, certain base. So tell us a little bit about your book, and perhaps we can sort of take it from there.
Totally. Well, Dave, it's fine. It's great to talk to you. And actually, I don't think our book would be as scary as you would think. You know, what I'm basically, it's really fun to be talking about someone from the United Kingdom. And you know, what I'm basically talking about in my book is republicanism in sort of the very grand sense of the term, going all the way back to Rome and even ancient Greece. You know, a republic is a way to run your country. And you know, we always kind of take it for granted, English-speaking peoples mostly live in republics, but I think as foreign events are now telling us, you look at Russia, you look at Ukraine, you look at China, you look at, like, they're not in republics. They're in authoritarian systems. And so, it actually gives a little more meaning to what I'm trying to say. And, you know, in the United States, kind of the title of the book, Rediscovering Republicanism, basically what the Americans did is they took what the English system was at the time. And if you go back to the late 1700s, there was a king, and right. So you had a parliament, but the king still had a lot of authority. It was kind of a mixed regime. Yeah,
it was still kind of an absolute. It wasn't absolute monarchy, but it was still kind of in that realm. Even if I forgot his name now, the Oliver Cromwell, you know, wanted a parliament there at the time. It was still kind of, you know, well, we still want a bit of power, the royal family, you know, at that time.
For sure.
They've lost they've lost a lot of power now, you know, a lot of credibility, but you know.
No, they have, and you're right. And I think but if you go back to that time, so we're talking about late 1700s, and you're right, King George III was on the throne at that time and had a lot of power. And it's so funny because language sometimes is such a powerful way to explain what's happening. At that time in England, the people of England were called the subjects of the king. And we sort of just take that for granted. You're like, you know, take a second and think about that. You're the subject of the king.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting, right? You're not a citizen. You're his subjects.
Yes,
It clearly sounds subordinate, right?
Yeah.
And so the Americans looked at that. They obviously didn't like that.
Yeah.
And they said, we don't think that. We think every citizen politically is equal. And so what I'm talking about in the book is basically just explaining, well, what did it mean when the Americans kind of took the English model at the time and then refined it and changed it, wrote down a constitution. Like, as you know, England actually doesn't have a written constitution. It's the longest existing parliament in the world. But the United States has some, I think, pretty important differences, and maybe, you know, well, I don't want to say improvements, but there's some things that have been written down based on the English model. And so I basically say, what was going on in America in the late 1700s? What did it mean to create a republic from scratch at that time? And then in America, at least, I think we've really forgotten the principles and ideas that were important when the country was founded. And so my whole book is basically explaining what those principles were, and I think why it would be beneficial for us to return to them.
Yeah, no, well, that's quite quite an interesting period of time. Obviously, there was some revolutions going on, and obviously, I think after the French, the Americans, for a similar reason, it was more for fiscal reasons, for tax reasons, had a revolution, and probably for reasons like you say, all men. Well, it's men and women now, if we want to be completely clear. But at that time, men was used a lot, so all men created equal.
Right? Yeah, all men are created equal. It's like you see where this logic goes. It's really funny. You're like, well, don't think too hard, right?
Yeah. And so that's why you got the Statue of Liberty and et cetera, et cetera. So that was an interesting time of a period of time that all this was going on. Of course, you didn't behead the King of England as did the King of France get beheaded, but
we couldn't get our hands on him. So
he couldn't get his hands too far away.
There's a big pond between.
Yeah, exactly. But I know you had your own personal issues of getting in, the same as me, really. I mean, I was kind of politically minded when I was a teenager, and probably even younger than that, maybe, but more teenager when you start picking up on things, and especially with the world around you when you see the news, and but obviously for me, things that was going on was things like Mandela was still in prison, Maggie Thatcher just got in power, and it was kind of a lot of changes for us going on then, the Thatcher era and stuff like that was when I was just at my high school, if you like, and just leaving school to get a job and things like that. And as I say, I was picking up on those kind of things, what's going on in the world, what that seemed unfair. Obviously, apartheid is a very unfair system, and I know, you kind of, it's kind of like looking at, well, slavery was an unfair thing and had to be abolished by some Republicans, like the one that
Abraham Lincoln, right?
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln. Most of the founding fathers, in the end, gave up their slaves and said, "No, hang on a minute, let's turn this around." But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, you had a personal issue, obviously something to do with your insurance or something like that. I can't remember what I read about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah.
How did you get involved with all this?
How did I get all? And why did I start writing this book? Or
yeah. I mean, if obviously you got political because the insurance, gave you a bad deal or something like that.
Yes, I see. Yes. Well, it was interesting, Dave. I mean, I think you're referring to. I was a plaintiff in a lawsuit. I think it had been called Texas versus. Was it Texas versus California? I forget what the lawsuit name was.
Right, okay.
But it was really it was all about the individual mandate here in the United States of requiring people to buy insurance, and so. Yeah. When the Affordable Care Act, also euphemistically called Obamacare, came out, there were some provisions in it that basically required people you had to have insurance. And if you didn't have insurance, you would pay a penalty, which is kind of a new thing in America. Like the idea of like having the federal government saying you have, even if it's a good thing, and I think insurance oftentimes is, the notion that the government can penalize you if you choose not to, right? I mean, maybe you don't want to be involved in the medical complex, right? There's people who have principled reasons. I don't want to participate. I don't want to go to hospitals. I don't believe in that form of medicine. And so to be, penalizing people for those potential beliefs of consciousness, I don't agree with on a principles level. So I became a plaintiff. It went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
It was kind of a big news, but we ended up losing on the legal merits. But I think that did kind of give me some more motivation to write this book and come out with it, because I think the idea of the founding fathers, if we told them that citizens were being penalized and fined if they chose not to purchase certain things, I think they would be really shocked by how far we've come.
Yeah.
You guys are the same way, right? In England, it's like people don't like being told what to do. I mean, it's just how.
Well, I think that's how the Brexit came along. Really, is that most of it was really, the ones that definitely said no, leave. A lot of them, although there was some kind of extreme right-winged kind of thing, and most of them was like, well, we just don't really want to be told what to do by Europe. We've got our own rules. It's up to us what we want to do. That kind of thing. Yeah, we've got a democracy that went on for ages. That was how it all came about. But of course, it was involved in a lot of I don't know. It got complicated, but it was basically like what you're saying. It's
Yeah. Dave, did you? And I know this, you're interviewing me, but just out of curiosity, how did you? I mean,
no, I actually voted to stay actually, but I most of London did. So it's part of. There was parts of.
But did you see value in the? Did you sort of see some merit in the other? Because you're kind of making a good argument for it. You're saying we have a democracy, like.
No, yeah, because the thing is that there is a left and right argument of why they need to leave. So that there was always that. So it's basically always a thing about whether you wanted to leave or not, irrespective of whether you're left winged or right winged.
Right.
Being in London, it's kind of a place where we're used to a lot of people living from the European Union, obviously, because of the free movement of people to work and everything. London's one of the places they're going to hit.
Right.
So of course, most of the voters, because the European Union, the people that come to work in the European Union from wherever, Poland and wherever, that lived in UK working under that system, are able to vote as well in the Brexit. So of course, most of the voters would vote, oh, stay, that kind of thing. But it's a bit like your electoral college. There were regions, like for example, Scotland. There was most of them wanted to stay in the European Union, and they even want a referendum now, which means that it might even say, well, let's get back in the European Union. And it's the same with Northern Ireland, which obviously was hot topic, and that was actually a sticking point as to really leave Brexit completely because of the Northern Ireland and IRA and stuff like that. So I'm really getting into British politics then. It did get a bit tricky, and and of course more up the north than there is in the south that said let's stay. So it was a regional thing really, but London you would expect to see most 3/4 at least said let's stay in the European Union. So that's where I went along with it. Really, it's just what I was used to being around. So but if you was in rural England, you could see their argument from their side, I suppose. But having said that, when Brexit was actually dragging on, and I was thinking, well, look, let's just leave and just get it all sorted and done with, like Boris Johnson, who's still the Prime Minister for the next few days, and he was coming through. He seemed to have got that message through. Just get it all done with. Don't dither around now. You voted, although he wanted to leave anyway. He was a leaver anyway. Right. Let's not kind of like put on a kind of, or shall we, shan't we kind of agreement there. If you voted leave, just leave then. That's really how it was. So
interesting. I mean, it sounds like you're sympathetic to that.
Yeah. In the end, I just thought, well, that's what the people wanted. It's a mandate, and it's just people getting fed up with the fact that it's just nothing was getting done really. But then, of course, the pandemic came and stuff like that. So it's all a different thing. And then I was closed. Of course, now it's a war in Ukraine, causing a global kind of thing, really, as well. Yeah. But let's get back to your book anyway. I know a lot happened in America during that time with obviously the Trump situation. I don't know if you're a Trump supporter or because some Republicans actually don't like Trump, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, the Republicans will still stick by him, I guess, because he was on the Republican side, but
you're right, tribalism, right?
Yeah, that kind of thing. That's how it is in the UK. It's more of a tribal thing, a bit like sports, with football. It's a tribal thing, but of course, as much as people are trying to at first, Boris had loads of party at 10 Downing Street, and then he's doing lots of wrong things, which he got caught out with, and people were standing by. Is that why
his premiership was just the parties? Is that what it was, basically?
Well, the party was standing by him with the tribal kind of thing, like you're talking about. But in the end, it just got too much, and then they thought, no, we're just going to revolt against him and just get him out. Because he just, and that's the kind of tribal thing that happens in politics, and I think it's similar in the US. With that, but well, with the Republican in your book, how was that? How does that fare with the system, and why did you choose that title? Actually,
Well, I mean, I think the title, I mean, it was descriptive of what I want to say. And I think it was also, I do think probably Republicans would be more likely to be interested in that book. And so I think my publisher wanted to go, and I agreed, I think wanted to go down, we use that title for both of those reasons. And it was great. You brought up the, Donald Trump, and it's like, I think it is really interesting if I look at the Republican Party, and I think they're probably more likely, people in the Republican Party are certainly more sympathetic to a lot of what I say in the book. I don't care. I mean, I'm not particularly partisan.
Yeah.
I'd be happy if Democrats saw value in my book and wanted to use some ideas, but my inclination tells me it's probably going to be the Republicans that would be more interested. And I think in my book, I don't know where this goes. I mean, I think Donald Trump, obviously, he's not going to live forever. And so at some point, we're going to have something more than just, hey, here's our guy, right? We have to have ideas. We have to have policies. We have to have values. So in my book, I'm basically saying, I think that's the right answer. I don't think a person should ever be the cinder point of a movement. I think it should always be an idea. It should always be a principle. It should always be a policy or something of substance. And I think there's kind of a vacuum right now. Well, what could that even be? Right, in the Republican Party? Is it Donald Trump? Is it Ronald Reagan? And in my book, I basically say, no, I think for us to actually find fertile ground, we need to go all the way back to the beginning of the country and sort of like get really creative about, recreating our ideas and, reinvigorating, rediscovering the ideas and values that started this country in the first place.
I remember when I was studying politics, and I was doing American politics, and one of the things that came up, because there was also some American students doing like one semester, like just studying from America, just doing one semester at the University of London. And then one of the things they said was that, oh, you ask any Americans, would you want to get rid of the Constitution? They'll all completely say, no, no way. So just as a wind up, I just said, oh yeah, by the way, what do you think of the Constitution? Would you want to get rid of it? No.
You were thinking about asking me that question?
Well, I mean, you're saying let's go back to the drawing board, as if to say, well, let's get back to what the founders did and with the Bill of Rights and everything. I'd imagine you say no.
That's a great question. It's a provocative question. And I would just say that what I would just say is I think if you go back, well, then let's run that thought experiment, right? Like, let's go back and say, what were they thinking, right? What were the arguments they made to write the Constitution they did? And I think what I basically say in my book is it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, the level of thinking that these, at that time, men had. I mean, you look at the political commentary today versus, you look at George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin versus Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi. I mean, let me tell you, we have come a long way, right? I mean, these are a completely different quality of person. And which is really sad that it's been 250 years. And I think our leaders are less intellectually capable than people that, did not even have access to a telephone, let alone the internet. And somehow they were still more knowledgeable. I mean, how is that even, that's really sad. But that is the case. And so I think if you said, look, well, here's what the arguments were, here's why they wrote the Constitution, I think most people would say that makes a lot of sense. And so in my book, what I'm saying is it does make a lot of sense. And yet when you look at what we're debating in politics today, the values and beliefs that the founders had, are no longer really as important to many Americans. And I think that should change.
So would you say that let's look at the Constitution and make some changes there, or completely change it?
I think we need to make sure. No, the Constitution, I think, is solid as it is. I think the politics, because the Constitution puts some safeguards and rules about how we play politics. Yeah. But then how we're actually playing is totally somewhere separate. Yeah. So in the book, I basically say, the founding fathers, they're like these three really important values. And I think people in England and really English speaking peoples around the world, I think would really identify with these. Really trying to give the individual as much freedom and autonomy over their lives as possible. Second is have some type of subsidiarity or federalism, right? Like let you guys have this with Scotland, right? Like let local areas have some control, not total, but some control. We call that federalism.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is civil society, which is we have to get out of this mindset that the only institution that can solve problems is the government, particularly the federal government. I mean, the United States, the evidence is so terrible. I mean, it's like it's just so obvious that it is not a particularly effective institution to solve problems. It's just not.
No.
And so
this is going to the argument of the European Union as well, and I just studied the European Union as well in my policy, and people are wondering, well, is it going to be a federalism kind of organization or neoliberalism or what? You know, is it just a group of countries agreeing on trade, or is it a federal state? And it's growing like it was becoming a federal state when you look at the federal model of the USA and the EU. Right. I think they still do say, oh, it's, you know, they say the EU and USA says this. They never, and this is what part of why Brexit got out. Brexit came about. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's a similar argument that you're talking about in terms of, well, you know, the federal government, you know, isn't really effective enough to rule the whole of USA. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what the argument of Brexit was.
And there's a lot of evidence to support that. It's not just John Nantz says. I mean, so much of politics is hand wavy, thoughtless. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. And what I tried to do in my book was go do some actual research and look at the results. I mean, that's what I get paid to do as a consultant.
Right. Yeah.
Go look at data.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about your work as a consultant. What is it that you do as a consultant? I mean, obviously, I've mentioned at the beginning, but obviously that intro was given to me by your agent, you know, your PR. So,
sure,
you know more than me about it. So,
we do. So we do a lot of strategic planning.
Yeah.
So growth plans, and then what we call kind of performance management systems. So let's say you've got an organization, it's here, it wants to go here, and you say, okay, well, let's really, the strategic plan part is always, okay, where do you actually want to go, right? And let's get super clear about where you want to go. What does success look like? Where do you want to be playing? How are you going to win? Or sort of like some basic questions that we like to ask. And then you really build out the plan. Like, here's how we're actually going to get there. So that's a strategic plan. And then oftentimes we'll help people. And I mean, human beings can identify with this because it's like, we call this our annual resolutions. Like, what do I want to do next year, right? Kind of thinking that through. So it's very similar to that. And the second thing we'll have to do most commonly is we call performance management system, which is I have a strategic plan. Then how do I actually execute on it? Over time, how do I actually make sure that we're executing against the plan that we had? And that's the second most common project that I do.
Yeah. So is it kind of like more management consultant or?
Exactly.
Just basically put it in. Okay, yeah. Well, I don't want to go too much into it, except if it is something that you want to talk about with the audience here and everything, because obviously, you know, it's kind of personal development, but you know, obviously managing stuff is part of it. How do you think this slots in your work with what's happened in the world in the last couple of years or so?
Like from the book's perspective, or just from my day job?
Oh, give both really, because obviously you're going to consult companies that have been hit hard by the pandemic, and obviously with what's going on with the economy now, and obviously with the book as well, where things have been reshaped, and you know, politically, it's not just only in the US, but things are going on all over the world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't know. Let me think. I mean, I think maybe my book has a little more relevance to this question. I think people are trying to figure out, and it is kind of an interesting situation. Where do we go from here? I think fundamentally that's kind of the argument that we're having. And you use the word neoliberal. I think is a good word to describe sort of where we were from the fall of the Soviet Union to, you know, call it 2020 or 2016, whatever, 25-year period.
Yeah.
And then I think there's just a number of complaints that people have about things that they don't think are working well. And I think we're kind of debating, you know, where do we want to go? And I think one impulse, and you see this in certain countries in Europe, you see this in the United States with Donald Trump. One answer is some form of soft authoritarianism, right? We elect a strong person to solve our problems. And that's one direction you can go. And the direction I recommend going, and we'll see whether there's support for this, but the one that I at least want to advocate for is I do think the first principles of our various countries are pretty sound. And I think returning to them and actually reapplying them is the best path forward to solving the problems of today.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I mean, I haven't had a total look at your book. I mean, I can look at some chapters now and see where it's going with that. Let's have a look inside. Amazon very kindly gives us a few free pages to look at, including my own, but my book's more personal development. Although I did put my politics dissertation out there somewhere, but that's
nice.
But that's not the same as your book, which has been published through publishers the same as my self-help book, if you like, or self-improvement book. So yeah, I can see you've got competing visions, observing the result, sovereignty and solvency. That's quite an interesting one with what's going on in Russia anyway, isn't it, really?
Yeah, no kidding.
Solvency, yeah. Well, I suppose that's an interesting one, isn't it, really? Tell us about those three areas then: competing visions, observing the results, and sovereignty and solvency of the book.
So those are the three sections of the book.
Yeah.
And the first one is just kind of what I was saying at the very beginning is, I'm kind of trying to explain how did we get to where we are. And so, yeah, what I basically do there is I basically say, look, there was a vision of politics that we had at the beginning of the country.
Yeah.
And which was the founding of the founding fathers that we were talking about before. That was like one way of looking at politics. Yeah. And then there was this other way of looking at politics called American progressivism, which is really kind of like the most different form. And so what I basically explained there is here are these two ways of looking at politics, and why did we move from one more towards the other over time, which we have done. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like setting up the situation, like why did we go from one to the other? And the second one, observing the results, is kind of saying, hey, look, we put this stuff in place. Has it worked or not? And that's where I do a lot of the research of like looking through the various federal programs, saying, hey, which have worked and which have not worked? And if they haven't worked, why not? So that's section two. And then the third one, sovereignty and solvency, is saying, okay, great. You have a criticism. This isn't working. Where do we go? Right? What do we actually go do? Right? And that the third section is basically saying, hey, here's a view of where I think we could go from here.
Right. Okay. A way forward.
A way forward,
kind of thing. Yeah. Oh, well, actually, it has got afterward a path forward on it, actually. So yeah. I noticed one part in chapter 4, you talk about windfall politics, and that word is banded around quite a lot with us, and I'm sure it's the same with you in terms of the rising price of energy, gas, etc., particularly gas. And by the way, you call the stuff you put in your car gas, and we would call it petrol, but we talk about gas for the home and things like that. But in any case, they're making extreme amount of profit. Yeah. Where when you look at the cost of living and the inflation going up so much, it just doesn't add up at all with what people are being charged. It's just seems, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. And of course, obviously with the Russia situation with their own energy, that they can obviously control Germany and sort of say, no, you're not having any of our gas at all, kind of thing, and really pulling the rug under the carpet there. What is the windfall politics of this book talking about? Because we're talking about windfall tax on these gas companies, these big oil companies.
That true?
That is true, yeah. And what they've done now is say, yeah, we're going to put, well, because the Conservatives are more like Republicans, they've decided to call it a levy or something like that. Okay, meaning some kind of tax, to stop the cap, but it's not really working too much, I don't think. Although the Labour Party, which is like your Democrats, are saying, beforehand, we're saying you better put a windfall tax on, or otherwise this is just going to keep going out of control. Put a windfall tax on there. Is this the kind of windfall politics you're talking about, or even worse, or even different?
I would say it's very different. It's a very different term. it's kind of referring more to what happens when politicians are in charge. Yeah, so it's very different. I want to be completely candid.
Okay, yeah.
It's basically saying what is the dynamic when politicians are running social insurance programs like Social Security in the United States. I know you guys have your own kind of old age retirement program.
That's right, yeah.
And yeah, just what happens when you have politicians who are reelected every 2 years or 4 years or 6 years run programs that are supposed to be sustainable over the long run.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? And what you find is that the programs are almost always mismanaged.
Yeah.
For pretty obvious reasons, which is that the timelines of the politicians in terms of their electoral reelection cycle, right, is very near term, but they're being asked to run a program that's supposed to be run over the long run. And that difference is very important, right? And so it causes all sorts of problems.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of more specific to the American politics, if you like, in that sense, and really. So rather than a specific reason, I was just curious actually about that side of it. But yeah. Okay. So tell us where people can find your book.
If they go to Amazon, they can just type in Rediscovering Republicanism. It should be the number one thing that comes up.
Yeah.
And if people are interested in reading the book, I would appreciate it. We have audiobooks, we have paperback, we got all the different options. And obviously, Dave, you were looking at the free sample material online, so check that out.
Even my book's got it. I mean, Amazon just does it. I don't know why. I mean, unless you can put a bit to say no, I don't want that. Most books have got that, haven't they? So.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
And I've appreciated this conversation. If your readers are interested in learning more, would love to have them take a look.
Yeah, sure. As I said, I've had a few Democrats on this show, and it's nice to balance it out with the Republican view as well. And it hasn't been a heavy, real kind of contentious sort of conversation or anything like that. It's quite
we have enough of that in society.
Exactly.
Let's have some fun.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, John. And John, that's exactly what it's been like on this podcast today. I really enjoyed this conversation with you today, and thanks a lot for coming on to talk about your book and basically give your own take on things, which is really what it's all about, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Dave. It's great to connect with you. Appreciate you.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.